Good evening, everyone. We're going to be starting the class momentarily. All right, good evening. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone had a good holiday, good 4th of July. So in today's class, we'll get straight into it. We're going to be talking about working with sellers. We're going to go over brokerage relationships, transaction broker, why, in my professional opinion, I recommend working as a transaction broker within the state of Florida. But we're also going to discuss the other type of brokerage relationships, what's the difference between them, and also spend some time talking about working with sellers and filling out a listing agreement. Not so much about filling out the listing agreement, we're going to talk more about taking the listing and working with an actual seller. So we'll get into that. First, let's go ahead and open up the stream here so we can get, there we go, perfect. All right then. So as always, before we begin, if you're new here, our company is NIS Realty Inc. We're licensed in the state of Florida. Take a quick second to talk about our company. We pay all of our agents 100% of your real estate commission. So there's no brokerage split. You keep 100% of your commission. Your commission's $10,000, you keep $10,000. If it's $100,000, you keep $100,000. More information about our company is on our website, nisrealty.com, or you can read the description below in this video, or go to our About Us page on YouTube, or check us out on social media. The social media links are also on our About Us page on the YouTube channel, as well as our website. But if you're licensed in the state of Florida, this is something that interests you, feel free to give us a call for a free confidential consultation if you're interested in 100% commission or anything that we offer. Other than that, let's get into today's class. Let's talk about what we're here to discuss today, working with sellers, transaction broker, brokerage relationships, and pretty much take it from there. So, give me a moment here just to make sure this is working here and you can see the screen well. Just give me one moment here. All right, perfect. So, the first thing to discuss here concerning the brokerage relationships real quick is we'll talk about, as you can see I have highlighted here, brokerage relationship. So in the state of Florida, there's really 3 different types of brokerage relationships. You have the first one, which is the most common that I've seen, and the one that I recommend that you operate as in pretty much every scenario, is as a transaction broker. The transaction broker is usually the standard one to go to within the state of Florida when you're representing a client, whether you're representing a seller or a buyer, or even a landlord or a tenant. As a transaction broker, you could represent pretty much both sides, so you could work with the seller and the buyer easily. There's no restrictions. You just owe your specific duties to the client and so forth, but pretty much the main thing about transaction broker, which separates it from the rest and why it's the most commonly used, is you're allowed to represent both parties. So let's say you're working with a seller and you list the property for sale. If a buyer contacts you directly, you could keep the full commission and work with the buyer and represent both sides. Whereas the other relationship, which as you could see here is a single agent, this is something you want to avoid, because as a single agent, if you're working with the seller as a single agent relationship, you cannot work with the buyer directly. Now there are ways to transition to a transaction broker, but as you can see here, this is one of the terms that you can see in this particular contract is consent to transition to transaction broker, but it just requires more paperwork, more time. It's not really worth it in my opinion, because it's just added more paperwork, more time, more things to do, which is time is money, and you don't want to be spending time on things that's not really it's kind of irrelevant. So I don't really recommend working as a single agent unless under very unique circumstances, just in case the buyer wants to work with you directly, and so you could work both sides of the transaction. Because if you are a single agent, you can't work with both sides. And if you want to transition to a transaction broker, it can be done, but with additional paperwork. And in my professional opinion, it's just not worth the time. It's better to just operate as a transaction broker. So also the last relationship, which is the third one, is a no brokerage relationship. I very rarely see this relationship used. I think the only times I've really ever seen it used is if there's like an investor and they're just using the realtor for maybe access to the MLS, or for just maybe hold an escrow deposit, but the investor is kind of handling the whole transaction themselves, and they're just paying a small fee to the no brokerage relationship broker. I've really never see it. I've seen it very seldom, but that's the no brokerage relationship. And we could go into some forms here that I could show you that discuss the what the duties are of each relationship. So let's see here, transaction broker. Transaction broker notice. So this is a form that we use. So when you're representing really anyone, a seller or a buyer, really anyone in the transaction, and you want to just give a form to let them know that this is the relationship that you're having. The transaction broker duties are dealing honestly and fairly, accounting for all funds, using skill, care, and diligence in the transaction, disclosing all known material facts that affect the value of residential real estate that are not readily observable to the buyer, presenting all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner, limited confidentiality unless waived in writing by a party. This limited confidentiality will prevent disclosure that the seller will accept a price less than the asking or listed price, that the buyer will pay a price greater than the price submitted in a written offer. You can read the rest of this paragraph, but basically offering limited confidentiality, and any additional duties that are entered into by this or a separate written agreement. So basically this is the form that you could work with the seller and the buyer, and you don't have to turn the buyer away or not represent both parties in a transaction. And these are the duties that are owed. You could look through this particular form, but it's pretty much there. Now we could look at a single agent relationship, the one that I don't really recommend using, but we'll go ahead and take a look. Single agent. Let's see if we can pull this up here. Give me one moment. Single agent notice. Here we go. So single agency. What are the duties that are owed within a single agency here? It's basically dealing honestly and fairly, loyalty, confidentiality, obedience, full disclosure, accounting for all funds, skill, care, and diligence in the transaction, presenting all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner, disclosing all known facts that materially affect the value of the property. And basically, the single agency is you need to provide the client, whoever you're representing, with utmost loyalty and confidentiality and obedience. And because of that, it's not very descriptive here as far as what exactly does all that mean. But to simplify it, what it basically means is that you can't represent both parties in the transaction. That's there's a few other things that you could read through here, such as the loyalty, obedience, but the main thing about it is if you're a single agent, you can't represent the both parties in the transaction as a single agent relationship. You can't be a single agent of the seller and a single agent of the buyer. That's just it's dual representation. It's illegal in the state of Florida. You can't do that. So basically, that's why you have a transaction broker relationship, because a transaction broker, you're not due that loyalty and obedience, which in simplified terms, it's basically meaning that you don't have to You can represent both sides in the transaction. You're not doing that full obedience and loyalty to one specific party. You're operating as a transaction broker. You're there to facilitate the transaction and to, of course, account for all funds, use skill, care, and diligence, deal honestly and fairly, limited confidentiality. So, that's the whole point of a transaction broker. So basically, I really don't recommend working as a single agent unless under very specific and unique circumstances. There's very few times, especially in residential. Maybe if you're doing some type of commercial or industrial real estate, there's times to operate as a single agent. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. I'm mainly referring to residential real estate. And it's much easier to operate as a transaction broker. If you're with our brokerage and you feel like doing a single agency, I suggest you consult me or consult your broker before you do it, because it just makes things difficult. And another problem, this is actually pretty important with single agency. Let's say I take a single agency relationship and I'm representing a seller, because all the rest of the agents and everyone within my brokerage now is not allowed to work with a buyer if I'm representing this seller as a single agent. So that makes it difficult. So let's say there was another agent within my company that found a buyer. Because I'm representing the seller as a single agent and we're both a part of the same brokerage, that other agent who has an interested buyer can't use any agents within our brokerage to represent them. So they would have to go somewhere else to get represented by another realtor outside the brokerage, and that's a loss of commission to that agent within our brokerage, and potentially doing everything in-house. So it makes things difficult. Now one of the agents within our brokerage maybe lost out on that commission, all because you're working as a single agent for the seller. So it just makes things more difficult. I highly recommend don't even really just consider working as a transaction broker when you're doing residential real estate. It's just so much easier, and there's a lot more liabilities when it comes to single agency, because if you do that, you work with a seller as a single agent and another agent within your brokerage brings in a buyer and you facilitate that deal, you could potentially doing something there that you're not supposed to be doing and open doors for getting in trouble and liability. And that's one of the main reasons I have this class, is to reduce liability upon yourself, upon your company, just make life and business easier so you can reduce liability and problems. So transaction broker, if there's anything to get out of this conversation, is use the transaction broker relationship. It's so much easier. There's also the no brokerage relationship. We could go to that real quick. I could go over those quick forms. Give me a second here. No broker. No brokerage relationship. Let's see here. So no brokerage relationship, just a couple of quick things here. Just dealing honestly and fairly, disclosing all known material facts, affect the value of residential real estate, accounting for all funds entrusted to the licensee. Very simple things here. Like I said, a simple way of looking at the no brokerage relationship is to basically, the only time I've ever seen this used is if it's there's a client. Usually the way I've seen it, it's like an investor who pretty much will handle everything on their own, and the only reason they're using the realtor is for some type of value the realtor's bringing, a minor value. Maybe they just want to get some information on the MLS about the property, but the investor is going to be handling the whole deal themselves, working with the listing agent, and then they're just going to pay a small little fee to the no brokerage relationship realtor who gave them some of the information from the MLS, or maybe they're just using that particular realtor to go over to hold escrow funds, to just hold some escrow funds, or to maybe disclose something that's available to the property that the investor may not know. But I really never see the no brokerage relationship. It's very seldom that I see it used. So that's pretty much that. Give me one moment here. Okay, sorry, I'm back. Seems that the stream might be dropping a couple of frames here and there, but I think it should be working. So we're going to continue forward. Let's see if I can make this here a little bit better. All right. So now we're going to discuss working with sellers. So let's pull up a listing contract and then start discussing about working with sellers, some things that I could recommend that would make things easier. So now you know about the relationship types here. And if anything you get from this is you want to usually always operate as a transaction broker. So listing agreement. Now, a listing agreement I always recommend to use is the exclusive right of sale listing agreement transaction broker. A lot of times I see mistakes made is, you'll do the exclusive brokerage listing agreement, and then, I've discussed this before. You want to have always the exclusive right of sale that guarantees your commission. With the exclusive brokerage, there is a loophole in there that you cannot be paid your commission if it's ever used or if that term's ever implemented. So my recommendation, if you're going to be taking a listing, you always want to do exclusive right of sale. And the same thing with a rental, exclusive right to lease. And I always recommend use the transaction broker. So exclusive right of sale listing agreement, transaction broker. This is the specific listing agreement that you want to use. Sorry about that. This is usually the best thing to use. That would be very helpful as far as when it comes to your listing agreements. So exclusive right of sale to guarantee your commission, transaction broker to reduce liability and make it easy on you and your entire company so that anyone could work with the buyers, including yourself. So let's talk about the exclusive right of sale listing agreement, transaction broker. All right. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. I pull this up. Perfect. Okay. So the exclusive right of sale listing agreement, transaction broker. Let's talk about working with sellers a little bit here. Once again, I highly recommend that you use the exclusive right of sale, because the exclusive right of sale term that you can see here, it guarantees your commission. So you always want to keep that in mind. You don't want to be putting yourself in a situation where, potentially a loophole could be exploited or used in another term to not pay your commission, mainly if the seller sells the property on their own to a family member or a friend or someone they know, and they don't want to use you anymore. They could use that through the other listing agreements. So working with sellers. Now, the best thing that I could recommend is that when you're speaking to sellers and you're trying to get a listing, the most important thing between that conversation, especially when you're dealing with the public and individuals that you've never met before, and you're trying to earn their trust, build a rapport, see if you could work together. The most important thing that I have found when having these conversations with sellers is basically having the conversation of what can you do for me? That's one of the key terms. Is that's usually, even if individuals aren't thinking that's usually the selling and driving factor is what can you do for the seller that's another realtor can't do. So that's usually the most important thing, because I'm sure the sellers might ask questions about how many homes have you sold, what company do you work for. They might ask all these different things and so forth. And one of the first things that I'd recommend you have in this conversation is, this is my approach to working with sellers. Maybe it doesn't work for everybody. You may have your own technique and ways that you speak to individuals or want to try that works best for you. But for me, when I speak to sellers or potential sellers that are looking to get a listing and looking to do business with me, is one of the first things I like to ask them and tell them is that basically, and you can word this however you want to word it, but the message I like to get across is that, what can I do for you? I need to bring value to your business and so forth. Because if I'm unable to bring any type of value, whether it's number one, making you some money, number two, saving you some money, or number three, bringing some type of value other than that. Mainly the two things would be making them money or saving them money. And if I can't do that for them, then there's no purpose of. Give me one moment here. I believe the stream is dropping again and the connection's bad. Okay, I think the stream is stabilized now, but yeah, sorry about that. Not sure what's wrong with the connection today. But as I was saying, when you're working with sellers, one of the most important things you could get across to sellers is basically bringing value to them, whether it be making them money or saving them money. And that's one of the first things, however you want to word it, I would get across to potential sellers or anyone you're looking to get a listing agreement for, is to basically tell them what separates you from the rest. Is, first of all, we need to address if I can make you any money or I could save you any money, or if there's any other type of value that I could bring to your business. Then from there, you could basically take that information and then go from there. So one of the first things is making the money, saving the money. I'd recommend being negotiable as far as your commission split is in the beginning. That's just my recommendation. How much you want to work for as far as the commission, I'd recommend being negotiable with it. But that's up to you. I feel it's better to lower my commission than to lose a listing, because if you lose a listing, you get zero commission instead of just lowering your commission. But that's just my opinion. You may feel otherwise, so that really just depends on personal preference and opinion. But that's one of the first key driving points as far as helping someone make money and save money. The other things are basically, depending on how you want to prepare a listing presentation, I like to keep things simple and just offer, just discuss commission splits and so forth. However you word it, once you advertise the property on the MLS, that pretty much does all the work for you. But you may or may not want to give that whole disclosure to your clients and so forth. The main things I usually would focus on is basically helping them make money or save money, and then how you word those conversations or do it from there just depends from that point. And then of course it's good to have some type of just build a rapport from there, instead of just asking for a listing or trying to get the listing. When I did a lot of listings working with for sale by owners and so forth, that's usually would be my key driving point, is discussing commission splits and helping them save money, and basically building it up from there just to get a few listings done. And then once you have a few listings, you could basically go do your advertising from there. And then if people are interested in listing with you, you could explain to them your process and how you do things. So that would be my recommendation from there. And also, as always, as I've mentioned, is you want to work with the exclusive right of sale listing agreement. And basically, this is the commission, the listing agreement that I would recommend as far as making sure you secure your commission, and just the best listing agreement in my opinion. But that's my opinion. So we filled this out, and I have tutorial videos on the listing agreement here. And it's fairly simple, but this is the listing agreement that I recommend you use, the exclusive right of sale listing agreement transaction broker. So that's a little bit of information there. As far as working with sellers, some more information to basically discuss from there is really you have to develop your own I guess you could use it as your own pitch, your own sales conversation, especially if you're speaking to someone you never met before and so forth. A lot of times it's good to have some previous sales, working with some buyers or even other sellers, to have some type of basically some experience or something to show for, if they're going to ask a lot of questions. But I wouldn't worry too much about that, especially sometimes if individuals are asking a lot of questions. You can answer them the best as you can, but sometimes they may or may not work with you and so forth. My main thing that I'd recommend is basically try to keep the conversation on how much value you're going to bring to them, because that's usually in my experience, is a good selling point, and usually things that gets things across fairly easily is if you just let them know straight off, just right away, be transparent with them and just tell them, listen, for only way else to do business is I'd have to be making you some money or saving you some money, or bringing some other type of value to you. If I can't do any of those three things in any way, then there's really no point in us having any type of business relationship, because that's how I do business, and I'm interested in doing good business and bringing value to each other. Not just here to just make some money. I need to bring value to you. And that'd be the best way to have that conversation. However you word that is completely up to you, but that's where I would stay at. And if you want to add in other things or try to do other type of listing presentations or key points, I'd recommend you experiment and try different things. Some things work with some people, other things don't, but usually in my experience, always those three things: saving someone money, making them money, or bringing some other type of significant value to them is usually what's important. And if you could do one of those things in some way or another, that's usually what could be a key point, as far as earning a listing. And of course that's important too, but you do want to show that you know what you're doing and have some type of experience for taking a listing and how you're going to treat their property and so forth, and be able to do showings and schedule things and advertise it correctly. So it helps to have some support in the corner as far as that's concerned. You could, working for a brokerage or a broker that, or someone, maybe it's another agent that has a lot of experience that you could use and basically work in tangent with, to explain that this is who you work with and they're going to pretty much take care of a lot of things, but you're here to just build a rapport and just, be the main point of contact and establish a relationship. But you also have the backing of a brokerage or a broker or another colleague that can pretty much help out with a lot of things. So that's what that concerns from there. And that's pretty much it for today's stream as far as working with sellers. I know today was a short stream. It was only about a half an hour, but it seems that the YouTube video and YouTube Live is it's dropping frames a lot, and I think I'm cutting in and out here, so I'm not sure how clear this particular stream is going, but we'll do another stream another day. But this is just a quick conversation as far as working with sellers and the brokerage relationships. Thank you very much for tuning in, and hope to see you next time. Thank you and take care.